Okay, we might get started. Welcome everyone to the honours session. My name is Professor Amanda Abel and I'm Deputy Dean for Learning and Teaching in the Faculty of Sciences. And I'm joined here today by a number of our honours coordinators as well as the Faculty of Sciences team as well. And the idea for today is that I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction to what honours is all about. And then we will have breakout sessions later. But we'll also have a couple of students, Kylie and Alicia, who will be telling us a bit about their experiences in honours as well. So honours in science, what is it all about? Well, essentially, honours is one of those extra years that gives you a bit of an edge, I would say, in the marketplace. And sorry, I'm just, we've, okay, now I've got my pointer working. And I guess what I want to do today is just tell you a little bit about what honours is all about and why you would want to study honours. So honours gives you the opportunity to investigate another area of interest, perhaps something that you have been really interested in during your undergraduate degree and you think, wow, I'd like to know a lot more about this. It also allows you to develop a set of really advanced skills, particularly in research or in the professional space. I'm going to talk a little more about what some of those skills are in a moment. And I think one of the main things that it does is it gives you an edge. It gives you that competitive advantage in the employment sector and for your career. It can also set you up for higher degree study. So if you're interested in doing a PhD, then honours is a pathway to that as well. Now, in many years, what we've done is we've always surveyed our honours students to try and get an understanding of why they liked honours, what they got out of honours, and 48% of our students actually thought that after they had done honours, it would make them much more employable, that it does make them more employable, and they were ready to enter the workforce. And about 26% go on to do further study. So honours is not just about going on to the high degree, it's also about giving you that competitive advantage. Here's some of what the students have actually said in the past. And what we've done is we've highlighted some of the things in bold, which are kind of the main messages that perhaps come through from those surveys. One of the reasons many students have done honours in the past was to broaden their employment options. They wanted to learn more about research. They just wanted to learn more about a particular area and I guess just take on the opportunity to deliver a project themselves. The best part of honours for many of these students, I think probably the key message in here is you'll see the word independence is there a number of times. So it gave them the opportunity to develop that independence. And if you think about employability, that's one of those skills that an employer, a future employer, would like to see in their employees, is that ability to give them a task, allow them to go away and do that particular task and be independent. The support of supervisors was obviously still important, and the fact that you could take the theoretical knowledge that you've been learning in your undergraduate and apply that to something in particular, I think is really important. Learning how research works. And also networking opportunities are also important because many of our honours projects are, for example, placed with industry. So it does give students that opportunity to expand their horizons somewhat. But that independence is quite important. And perhaps that speaks to the particular skills that we're trying to develop in our honours students. Now, obviously, you're learning actively because you're working either in a laboratory or in the field or working with other individuals in a group, which means that you're actively learning a particular area or discipline or a particular professional skill, depending upon the type of honours you're doing, and I'll talk some more about that in a moment. But you're also developing critical thinking and that ability to solve problems, both creatively and also those ones which are really quite complex. And so that, in a nutshell, I think is what makes it quite a good idea to do honours, because that's what our future employers are actually looking for. The other thing that it does do is, because you are working quite often in teams, research teams in particular, you are going to be developing your interpersonal skills. That's something else that's really important to your future employers. So there are two pathways which are available. We have disciplinary research and we have a professional skills pathway. So disciplinary research is that opportunity for you to focus in on a particular area or discipline. So you might think, oh gee, in third year I did a bunch of genetics courses, so I like genetics. I think I'd like to do that. That's an example of a disciplinary research, and we'll talk some more about what those particular areas are, and you'll have the opportunity to meet the honours coordinators soon. Professional skills, on the other hand, is another pathway which enables you to work through a bunch of areas like science communication, science policy, science education, and I'll talk some more about that in a moment too. So in these pathways, here's a little bit of a comparison for you. So for the research honours, the diagram on the left-hand side, you can see that there's usually a research project, somewhere between 12 and 18 units, depending upon the discipline that you do it in. And there's also some coursework, which is somewhere between 6 and 12 units. Professional honours, on the other hand, has got a much smaller project, a professional project, which is still research, but it's in a particular area. And I'll talk some more about that in a moment, which are 9 units. And then it has some core coursework, 9 units, and then it has 6 units of elective coursework. The two students that we've got talking to you today, one actually did the professional pathway and the other did the research pathway. So they'll be able to reflect a little bit upon their particular experience for you when we introduce them to you as well. In terms of the research pathway, as I mentioned before, it is based on your particular area or discipline of interest. Wherever your research project is located. Now, it doesn't have to be in a lab, it can also be in the field, for example, and it may be in one of the 4 schools that sit in the Faculty of Sciences. So we have biological sciences, physical sciences, agriculture, food and wine, and animal and veterinary sciences. So ag, food and wine is at the Waite, animal veterinary sciences is at Roseworthy, and then physical sciences and biological sciences are based on North Terrace campus. And you can see that we've listed the kind of discipline areas under each of those. And so it ranges from the environment and molecular biomedical science areas in the biological sciences through to physics and chemistry and geology-based areas in the physical sciences. I think ag, food and wine's name speaks for itself, and then animal and vet science probably also speaks for itself as well. And we've got each of those honours coordinators waiting, ready for when we go out to the breakout room, so you can ask them about their particular projects as well. In the research pathway, what you can expect, as I said before, it can be in the lab, it can be in the field. And really what happens is that research project, which if you remember was between 12 and 18 units, focuses in on your study area. So you spend most of your year working in a particular project and you are working independently. You've got that opportunity to work with some of the world's leading researchers. And the idea of this is, you're working in a research team, they're really passionate about their work. And really what they want to do is develop you as a researcher. They want to develop your skills in critical analysis. They want to develop your skills in how to do research. And as I mentioned before, that means that's going to make you much more employable at the end of the day. The other thing that happens during a research honours is that you write a manuscript or a thesis, which means that you're also developing your ability to communicate and your writing skills. And because it is very independent as well, you are mentored by the researchers in your laboratory or field. depending on where you work, but it will develop your skills to better prepare you for that particular discipline. The professional pathway, on the other hand, is not necessarily discipline specific. It may sit across disciplines, and it may be in areas such as science communication, education, innovation, policy, or project management. And so you are still doing a project, a research project, much smaller, 9 units, but it's in a very specific area that's related to, I guess, the advancement of science would be one way to think of it. And so what you would expect in the professional pathway is that even though there is a little bit of the research happening, and that means you're going to be developing your problem solving and critical thinking skills, there is a much greater emphasis on professional skill development, so on communication and interpersonal skills in particular. And what we do in the professional pathway is we build your broader professional skills that are highly sought after by employers in any field. We also have, so other than our honours coordinators for each of the research pathways, we also have our honours coordinator, Hayley McGrice, awaiting for the breakout rooms later as well for the professional pathway. So one of the other things that's really nice about honours is there are some scholarships that are available, and they range, you can see, from $2,000 all the way up to $27,000. And they're both internal scholarships, so provided by the university, or they are external, so usually provided by industry bodies. And you can find out more about this from the Sciences Scholarships website for more details. So what I would like to do now is actually hand over to the first of our presenters who have come through via the professional pathway, and that's Kylie, who's now doing her PhD in science education. So I'll hand over to you, Kylie, to tell us a little bit about your impressions of honours.
Thanks, Amanda. Hi, I'm Kylie, and I've been asked to, again, talk about my journey to where I am today. And for me, it didn't really start off, you know, in the right place, I guess you would call it, because I didn't actually want to do a research. I felt that research was really intimidating. It wasn't something that I thought I could do. It was just one of those things that I thought I would never do. In year 12, I was like, I'm just going to go do my double degree in Bachelor of Science and Bachelor of Teaching, graduate and start teaching, and that was my plan. But then when I got to 3rd year, I thought to myself, well, I don't really feel like I have those skills needed to be a good teacher yet. And I just didn't feel ready to get into that workforce. And that's when it was actually Greg who came up to me during one of my lab sessions. And he said, why don't we all come to the honours information session, which is this. And I thought, oh, I don't really want to do a research, but along I went anyway. And that's when I found out about the professional pathways. And when I came in, it was brand new. It was completely new. Very lucky for me because I wanted to be a science teacher. So science education is exactly what I want to do. And the thing with the professional pathway that really appealed to me was that there's a much smaller research component. Because I was so scared of research, having that smaller research component and a greater emphasis on actually what I actually wanted to learn was amazing. So I could, you know, get away with as little research as possible and still learn all those skills that I wanted to. And when I actually did start my honours, it was more than what I'd even expected. I learned skills in writing a resume, writing cover letters, how to build a good LinkedIn, interview skills. So it was all of these skills that I thought I was lacking, and I actually did manage to build it, which was amazing. And at the end of my honours, I realised research isn't actually that scary. It's actually something that I kind of enjoy. So for me, that was a revelation. And I never would have gotten to that point if it wasn't for this professional honours, because it was less intimidating to start off with. And now suddenly I'm going into like the biggest research I've ever done, 3 years worth. And I feel okay about it, which is, it's something. Because with a PhD, I was actually quite on the fence about it, because I didn't actually know if it would help me in the long run. But again, doing that professional honours, doing the research, I realized that because I was able to actually pick exactly what I wanted to research, it wasn't me going into a lab, into a project that was already established. It was me developing my own area of interest. What I wanted to do, I could actually focus on. So I actually had the opportunity to research on the exact topics that I wanted, which is the impacts of how maths and science work together and the learning of science and in science education. So because I actually got that opportunity to look at this very specific area that I was personally interested in, it actually gave me confidence to go into a PhD, because I knew that I actually had the skills required to do exactly what I wanted, to be really focused in my research. And I also had I have a really good supervisor. So you don't always have to know your supervisor before you start these kind of things, but I did, which was very lucky for me because I'm very scared of life. And knowing my supervisor beforehand really helped me out. And he's been really great. Simon Pike. Anyone in chemistry will probably know him, and he's very good supervisor, and developing that supervisor relationship also really helps in the research. And so I think that's all I wanted to say. But again, the professional pathway really was that it was a door that I opened that I never thought I would. I didn't even know it was there. And when I did open that door, it kind of like the sun shone down, and it was really, really exciting. And now I'm in a position that I could never in 100 years, I would 100% have denied being in a PhD 2 years ago. So taking these kind of opportunities is really interesting, because again, I started with, I'm too scared to go to work, and now I'm going, oh, well, now I'm doing a PhD, there we go. So I think that's all I have to say today, but I will be around for questions if anyone does have any other questions. I think I might pass it on to Alicia now.
Great, thanks Kylie, much appreciated. Good to know that the sun has shone down on you and where you've decided to go on to do a PhD. I think your comments just highlighted quite nicely the fact that quite often we're not really sure where we're going to go with our careers, and honours just gives you that little bit more time to discover what research is all about. So with that, we might actually move on to our next past student, Alicia, who came through the research pathway in geology. Thanks, Alicia.
Thanks, Amanda. Hi, everyone. I'm Alicia. I am currently undertaking my honours degree in geology, and prior to that, I did a Bachelor of Science, Mineral Geoscience. Throughout my entire degree, I never really even considered doing additional research, and it wasn't really until the end of the semester of my final year of my degree when projects started being released and I started getting to know some supervisors, and those supervisors offered me some amazing projects that I just could not pass down. So I was offered a project which was looking at rocks over in Madagascar, but obviously because of COVID I couldn't go there in the end, but still currently I'm looking at rocks in the Northern Territory, so I've still been able to do 3 weeks worth of field work, which has really benefited what I've got out of this year. So going back to what made me decide to do honours in the end, I did a vacation program up in a mine in Queensland at the end of last year. And I was still very confused at this stage on what I wanted to do. Was honours going to be worth it for me? And I got talking to a lot of the people in industry about what their thoughts were on it. And they kind of put the idea out to me that because so many people nowadays are doing honours, you don't want to be the one that hasn't got that degree. And it offers you so many skills within industry. So in particular for me, it gives me great communication skills and be able to talk with other people from different departments, as well as being able to write research papers within the mine. That mine that I had the job at did offer me a position once I complete my honours degree. So that was kind of, if you go do honours, we'll give you this in advance. So I have actually got a job next year, so I won't be carry on with my additional research. But yeah, honours has taught me a lot so far. My thesis is due in about a month, so it's very much crunch time at the moment. But yeah, the skills you get out of it are amazing, the friends you make, and definitely you have such a good relationship with your supervisor in the end. I would class them as friends almost. Yeah, I think that's all I've got to say. Good luck, everyone.
Great, thanks, Alicia. Great to know that you've already got a job lined up. That's excellent, good news, and I'm sure your thesis you'll make it all on time and you'll do very well with that. I think the other thing that I would like to highlight that came out of what Alicia said there, and also Kylie, is that supervisor relationship. So one of the things before we move into questions, I just want to highlight is that there are all projects which are listed on the Faculty of Sciences website. Obviously, they're listed by supervisor. And as Kylie said, you don't need to necessarily know your supervisor yet at that point in time, but take the opportunity to go and find out who they are, what their supervisory style is as well. And obviously, their project has to interest you as well. So you'll find that on ua.edu.au Sciences Honours. So we've allocated a few minutes for questions now, and I have in the room here with me, I've got Ari, who's going to facilitate the questions. He's off to the side because he's using the computer. So if you've got questions for either myself, Kylie or Alicia, can you make sure that you put them into the chat? I've also got in the room with Sue Stevenson, who's the person who helps do the administration around honours, the person who helps you if you've got questions around enrolment and those types of things. So let's open up the floor, or I'll hand over to Ari, sorry, to facilitate the questions.
Thanks, Amanda. So yeah, if you guys could type your questions into the chat, that would be great. We'll do it through there rather than unmuting ourselves, just because then that way, if we run out of time, we've got the ability to send you a follow-up email with an answer to your question. Looks like we've got one in already. So if you guys could just keep them coming, that would be great. We'll keep these to general overarching questions about the degrees, why you might want to choose to study honours, careers, etc. And then in the breakout sessions following this, you'll be able to ask your more discipline-specific questions. So the first question is, hello, if I wanted to be part of the professional pathway, how do I know which research to choose?
Okay, so I guess that's being handed to myself. In terms of knowing which research to choose, we do have some projects which are available up on the website that are in the professional pathway. The other option is to also have a conversation with Hayley McGrice, who is the honours coordinator for the professional pathway, and she may be able to point you in the direction of possible supervisors who've got projects as well.
Thanks, Amanda. So the next question is it possible to do honours part-time? So I guess that's for you again, Amanda.
Yes, it is possible to do honours part-time. It will take you 2 years instead of 1 year.
Brilliant. And then we've got another one. Is the expression of interest honours form all we need to fill in initially to apply for honours, or is there a more formal application process?
So the expression of interest form is all that you need to fill in. Basically you're putting in there the information about which project you're interested in. I would suggest still having a conversation with possible supervisor of that project beforehand, except for in chemistry and physics where they get chosen afterwards. So expression of interest form, yes, is all that you need initially, definitely.
Yeah, so the next question is again for Amanda, sorry to our current students. So don't forget, guys, we do have Kylie and Alicia here. We've got real life honours graduates, so if you do have questions for them, please feel free. So the next question is about how competitive is the application process for honours? So the grade requirements, your study background, and just generally what a supervisor's looking for.
Yeah, so generally most students have got a credit grade average, but occasionally there are students with slightly lower grades. It just depends on how you've gone, generally in the third year of your studies. And so I think I gave the example of genetics before. Let's say you really like genetics in third year, then you probably will have maybe done 1 or 2 genetics courses, and therefore you've got the required knowledge to be able to go into a laboratory that's working in that particular area. That said, sometimes students may swap disciplines. They may have actually done, for example, I've had students in the past who've done chemistry and then they've come and they've worked on plant pathology, which had some chemistry in it. So it just means making that connection with the supervisor. I think most supervisors look for an aptitude to want to try to do your best at honours. That would probably be the main thing. And, you know, maybe you could ask that question again when you talk to the honours coordinators, because each discipline might be slightly different in terms of what supervisors look for.
Thanks, Amanda. And just to remind everyone, on the website listed on the screen is a full list of honours projects. So I do encourage you to check that website fairly regularly, as things are constantly getting updated and new projects are getting added. So please keep an eye on that. So the next question we have, we've got quite a few now. All right, so this is why we do it in the chat. So the next question we have is about student support whilst doing honours. So just to quickly cover that one, students in honours are always covered under the standard University of Adelaide support services, and will of course make any accommodations that we can within reason to ensure that you're able to complete your qualification. The next question is, what would be the difference between choosing honours and masters? So if someone's trying on the fence between the two of them, what would you recommend?
So honours is obviously 1 year. It's a standalone project, and that can then take you into a PhD after that. So it's 1 year. Masters, the Masters of Philosophy is what some students will also do, and they can use that to transfer across. But it also has coursework, or greater component of coursework. I think it does depend a little bit on the discipline. Personally, I would actually go for honours over masters because it's 1 year and you've got a Commonwealth supported place to be able to do that. So it doesn't, it basically goes to your fee help or your HECS, whereas Master of Philosophy doesn't. You need a scholarship to be able to do that. So I would actually do honours if it was me.
Thanks, Amanda. So Kylie, I'll get you to unmute yourself. The next question is for you. So Kylie, do you think you would have been more prepared for a PhD if you'd done research honours over professional? Now, before you answer, I'm just going to mute our microphone so you don't give feedback.
That's actually a really good question. And I think for me, I would never have done research if it was through the disciplinary research. So again, I only did research because it was a smaller component and I did feel like I could tackle that. So in that sense, I don't think that the disciplinary research would have been for me. And because I didn't actually want to research in chemistry either, and that was my major. So in terms of whether disciplinary or professional pathways are better for PhD, I think that depends on what you want to do in your PhD as well. And I think Amanda can probably elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think you actually do enough research in either version of the honours to be able to qualify to do a PhD. But as Kylie said, I think doing a discipline-specific thing, you're more likely to end up directly into that disciplinary research, whereas the professional pathway will actually give you, I guess, a broader sense of research. That said, Kylie has ended up into a very specific area of research in science education. But I do know of one of our former students who was actually one of my students in a professional pathway who's now going to be heading into a PhD in a discipline-specific area in agriculture. So there is that opportunity to swap and change. Nothing's set in concrete, I would say. You're still developing those same independence skills. You're still developing that ability to research, critical thinking, communication skills, etc.
Thanks, Amanda. So just conscious, we've only got a few minutes left, so we won't be able to answer every question direct here. So please ask them in your breakout sessions. And we can also send you a follow-up email a bit later in the week with answers to your questions too. So the next one is, if you're interested in going in and doing a PhD, is it better to go through honours or masters? Amanda?
I think I made my intent clear before. I think honours is actually potentially better in that case.
It also provides a bit of a scaffolded pathway. So if you do well enough in honours to gain entry into a PhD, you save yourself time. Otherwise, you could go on and do a master's and then go into a PhD. So it's better to go for honours first and then jump across later. The next question is, should we apply for 2 or more projects to maximise our chances of obtaining a preferred project, or would applying for one be sufficient?
So I think it will depend whether or not you've had that conversation with the supervisor first. So if a supervisor has said, yes, you can definitely join this project and I'll have you on board, then you may only list that particular project if you've already got that agreement with a supervisor. If not, make sure that you list a couple. What happens is that Sue Stevenson, who I mentioned before, will actually send out that to the honours coordinators, and they'll work to find the correct or the right supervisors and match you up.
So we've got time for one last question, then we will have to wrap up, unfortunately. So I think this is a really good one. Do Bachelor of Science advanced students still need to apply for honours, and is it the same process as Bachelor of Science students?
Yes, it is. So Bachelor of Science advanced students are still going to have to apply. Now we do have a 4-year direct entry program for honours. Those students that are in that, I think will still have to fill out the expression of interest form to be able to match you up with a supervisor and make sure that we've got you placed where we need to for your projects.
Okay, thank you everyone for submitting your questions. We really, really appreciate it. We've got a copy of the chat record, so we will be able to follow up with you after the fact. Sorry that we couldn't get to them all, but it's nice to see this level of enthusiasm with questions. So I'll hand back over to Amanda to keep things going.
Yes, it's great to see all the questions, and as Ari said, we will make sure that we get back to you and answer your questions.